Your team manages 2,600 units, $272 million worth of assets under management. Welcome to the Cash Flow Happy Hour podcast. I'm your host, Josh Baldovino, and on this podcast, we interview investors live on how they are increasing their cash flow. So let's grab a drink and get into it. Maggie, Jin, welcome to the podcast. How are y'all doing today?
Good. Hi, Josh. How are you?
I'm good. Weather is getting warmer on the West Coast. You East Coasters, what is it like over there?
Oh, it's actually really good. It's like 80s now. 80s, 90s. Yeah, we're not too shabby here.
And so Maryland and New Jersey, yes?
Yes.
Yep.
Have you guys always been based out of the East Coast?
Yeah.
Pretty much grew up in Maryland. I moved out of the Maryland for a little bit for college and then moved right back.
Okay. And then Maggie, to you. You nodded your head yes, too. So also from the East Coast.
Yes. I was going to point out Jen actually went to California for a brief period.
I did. I was in Southern California for college.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you didn't stay there, because you went to LA and not the Bay Area. Okay, but before we dive into it, obviously the headline for this episode is going to be that your team manages 2,600 units, $272 million worth of assets under management. One, I guess, how did you even get there? And so what's the quick background? Maggie, how about you go first?
Sure. So my background is in audit, or I have a background in CPA, but I don't do taxes, so don't ask me for tax questions. So my former job was in the bank, and I audited the investment bankers. So they package deals together, large deals, but I never thought I was able to kind of get into these deals as an investor, because you had to be at least $25 million net worth to even participate. So it's totally out of my mind to even think about that, investing in those deals. But I had the opportunity to look at how they put the deals together, how they analyze the deal, how they do the due diligence. So those are very, it was exciting for me to see that things behind the scene. But like 5 years ago, I quit my job in corporate because I have family, and I just decided to step out of that field. And at that time, we always wanted to, myself and my husband, we wanted to grow our own portfolio. We had 2 single family rentals at that time in New Jersey, and they're barely cash flowing. We probably make like $50 from the 2 properties per month. But we were thinking, okay, we got to figure out how to scale this and buy more properties. So when I took during that 1 year break, I just kind of decided I told my husband, like, let's give me 1 year to figure out how to get into this real estate. And I know I'm going to fail a lot. And so also telling myself to give myself some grace too, because I know it's a new career. So you kind of have to give yourself grace. And after 13 years in corporate ladder, you kind of have to rejigger your brain to something else. So in that 1 year, I learned a lot. I became a real estate agent. I also shadowed a flipper. And so I just kind of got into different types of investing and figuring out my way of how to get into real estate with my skill set and how to scale up portfolio. But we realized that I can't do it in New Jersey. and I realized also it was very hard to do one at a time. I just got into a lot of meetups and networking and conferences, and got into syndication. And I joined a mastermind group, and that's where I met Jin, actually. She's also a CPA. So we kind of bonded at that point. And our third partner, who's not here, she's also a CPA audit background. So why not three try and join forces and combine our resources and knowledge and tackle this. And I always love to be in a partnership because you keep accountable each other. And it's just much more fun when you have a group and so that's how we got here.
Well, that's fun. So you guys must have the nicest underwriting documents ever. We'll have to do like a follow-up episode where you guys can help us build out models, because gosh, that is the hard part for me, especially making it pretty. Jin, what about you?
Yeah, so like Maggie said, I have a pretty similar professional background in terms of how we got started in the Big Four accounting firm as an auditor CPA. For me, instead of going to Wall Street, because I live in Maryland, close to DC, I kind of ventured toward the nonprofit world. And it was just so for the better work-life balance. And I wanted to support a charitable cause with my professional skills. So I worked at a children's hospital after I transitioned out of the Big Four, and also for a global think tank. And that was over a decade. I worked for both of these companies. So it was really nice. I got to travel to different countries with my global think tank. We had offices in countries like China, Russia, Brussels, India. So it was really fun. So at that point of my life, everything was pretty nice. I had a young child and I was pregnant with my second one. And at about that time, I kind of felt like some restlessness in my heart. I felt like there was something I was searching for, and I didn't really quite have what I wanted, or maybe what I was meant to be doing, something like that. So over the next few years for me, my husband at the same time, he is a residential realtor, and his business started growing, and we were getting heavily taxed each year. So at this point in our life, we were living middle class lifestyle, working very hard. At this point, I had my second child, so we were paying a lot for childcare. And then at the end of the day, each year, taxes kind of took away a lot of our savings. So it was really frustrating for me and for him also, my husband, to be living in this cycle. And so at that point, I knew something had to change. I did a lot of research and learning, and kind of came to the conclusion that real estate was the answer to how I was feeling in my heart, that restlessness, that I wanted to do something more with my life, and also our big tax dilemma. And so that's kind of how we started looking seriously into different ways to invest in real estate, and really start building our portfolio back in 2018. So started small with like duplexes and single families. And then I met Maggie. Well, I joined the mastermind group where I met Maggie, and I did some syndications before I met her. But yeah, once we joined forces, I think our portfolio really grew from there. So
That's fun. Okay, so I want to dive into that of like the partnership structure, how that helped expand. Before we do that, just because to kind of demystify what the number means, and I'm going to pull up your website here. So if you guys are listening to this on a podcast, that is more excuse for you to also save this and go onto YouTube so you can see their beautiful website. So where you invest, amazing, lots of different markets. But I want to go into the bottom here of like the headline numbers. How the heck did you all get to 2,600 units under management, portfolio value of 272 million? Like, where did this start?
Yeah. So I can share. So we joined a mastermind group, and I think a lot of people like look at the overall picture, but you have to start small from somewhere. There's a lot of teams in the mastermind group where you find your partnerships, and there's a lot of roles that you can play in order to be part of the GPT. And of course, you have to put in your value, and our value is really underwriting, looking at analysis, and also we're able to bring out some our capital and our investor capital as well. So the 2,600, most of the deals when we started, we've been helping out. So either analyzing, we're taking a small role. We're also bringing investors through our vetting process. So we are still very involved in asset management and those deals, but in day to day, we don't have to get as involved. Towards the later in 2021 and 2022, we did acquire our own properties. When I say acquire, meaning like we sourced it, we found a deal, we put the deal together, we put a team together, and also we still can't currently like raise all the capital ourselves. So we do have to bring in general partners, other people who can bring in the rest of the capital for our deals. So I would say like most of the properties are where we actually help out on other teams. But there are the last two acquisition, which is a total of 6 properties, is about 388 units. Those are very hands-on, and it's a lot to do day to day. So you can't possibly do everything together. So you have to have a team, and then you have to have a tribe. So
I love it. And one thing that I learned from Best Ever, that there are so many different ways to get into multifamily investing. I think that initial roadblock of where can you start is the craziest part. So Jin, maybe could you tell me a little bit about kind of those? I know you syndicated before you met Maggie.
yeah.
Right. So what was that first deal for you?
Oh, the first deal, it was in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was learning about real estate syndications and multifamily investing at that time. And I met one of the guy in my mastermind group that we've eventually joined. And he was a great resource and just very knowledgeable. Trusted him a lot. He knew what he was doing, took carried the deal from start to finish, pretty much with him and one other partner. And so he wanted to give me an opportunity to essentially participate, get my feet wet in the syndication and immerse myself in the syndication world. And so he offered me the opportunity, and really grateful for that chance. And I forget how many, I think that was like 139 units. It's been a while now. But we gone full cycle on that deal. We held it for about 2 years or so, and we've gone full cycle on it already. But that was my first syndication in Atlanta, Georgia, on a Class C multifamily property.
Awesome. And then Maggie, I'm gonna throw it back to you as well. So like, what was that first deal for you, and how did you get involved with it?
Yeah, the first syndication deal, it's also the same thing in the mastermind group. I connected with another female syndicator at the time, and she's the one who brought me in. And she had a deal going on, so she was able to loop me in and be gracious to allow me to kind of shadow her. So, and that deal also went full cycle, and we did really well with investors. It was owned by a church, so you can imagine it wasn't really. It was taken care of, but it wasn't like pushed to where it could be. Rents were about $500, and people were staying there. There was a very old tenant that was there since 1970. That was the oldest tenant. So, but we put in a lot of capital in there, and we were able to bring rents up to, I think for a 3-bedroom, if you can get like $500. But when we transition upgraded, we were able to get $900 to $1,000 on those 3-bedroom units.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So your step in was the mastermind group. Jin,
Yes.
It looks like you met someone who let you get the foot in. I mean, I think a lot of people look at multifamily investing as kind of the next big step up in their kind of real estate investing career. And how to take that step is crazy, right? Because you think about what it takes to run the deal yourself. You have to not only be able to raise the capital for it, but your general partnership group, the core group who's operating, has to have a net worth more than the loan amount. And your brokers have to be the best friends. The lender's got to trust you. Like, there's a million different steps. So both of you, including myself as well, right, leverage someone else's experience to help increase your track record. Kind of like having your parents maybe open up your first credit card to help with the credit score there. What would you say would be the piece of advice for you all if someone else wanted to find that mentor, that group, that person of experience? What would you tell them as advice to find that person?
For me, I guess I think you always want to interview different mentorship group and see what fits you, because I would say not all mentors, it's not as much as they're good at it might not be good for your perspective, right? Because in your career and your journey, what kind of role do you want to take on? Do you want to be the capital raiser? Do you want to be deal sourcer? Do you want to be, you're kind of like get into the role, you're not even quite sure. So you have to kind of see, like, if you know the answer, which I did not know. So for me, it was more finding a tribe that people are similar values and similar culture, that driving forward, who has a momentum, who wants to do better and do things. That was what I was looking for. And then that's where I think I actually found Jin.
Hey.
And then Jin, how did you find your person?
So I would say, okay, so I've met this person at an event, and it took me over a year of like just slowly getting to know them and like talking to them, going to their other events, right? Really vetting them out before I decided, okay, they kind of speak my language. I like their culture. I like what they're about. So before I committed to joining the group. But then, however, I would advise people who are getting started in multifamily investing to, yes, it's important to have an interview and find a good mastermind group that matches your value, right? However, I would advise them to kind of take it slow because, you're going to, even when you're in a mastermind group and you're like leaning on other people's experience, it is very important to just take your time really to get to know the people within the group and kind of like how they operate. I wouldn't advise anyone to grow so fast, because growing too fast in this industry, you're going to miss a lot of things. And you're talking about multi-million-dollar deals when it comes to multifamily. And it's something that you want to take seriously. Definitely take your time learning and getting to know the people around you.
That's really good advice. I think that is the hardest thing is, you hear the podcasts, right? This 22-year-old has $50 million in real estate, making $50,000 a month, or whatever the headline is. It ends up being just crazy, right? And then you go to meetups and you're so inspired that the first person you meet at this meetup, you want to start, I want to start too. Cool, let's buy $100 million in real estate. And all of a sudden, like, you end up spiraling versus not really being able to like, discover your partnership as much. So I think you taking a year to then vet whoever you wanted to approach, I think was really smart. One more follow-up question on this, because everyone says, find someone, add value, find someone, add value, find someone, add value. Like, do you guys have a hot take or thoughts on that? And how do you actually go about adding value?
Yeah. I am a huge believer in that statement. For example, like when I told you I took a year to figure out this real estate and figure out which avenue I like to invest. So I did shadow a flipper, and it's a she, and she was a former accountant, and she's been flipping her business flipping houses for 4 years. And I really saw her as a mentor, and I just like, hey, can I work for you? I just want to shadow, and and of course, when you ask people this, it's people, the I also look at it from her angle. Like it takes time away from her too to do that. So I always try to add value little by little, but just sharing like, hey, here's a house. I did an analysis for her and I show it to her, and she understands the value that I can put in. So I keep on doing that for a few times. I also like walk through the house for her and show her videos. And slowly I help her do inspection walks and just start taking over a little bit of processes and help her like streamline her process a little bit more and then hook her in.
That is so smart. I mean, I'm sure even now, if someone were to go out and be like, I found this deal. I underwrote the deal for you. By the way, I walked it and here's a video of me walking through the property. They will pick up your call.
Right. Yeah. So you just have to keep on showing up, and that you're genuine and you really want to learn, and you really would love to their guidance, and they're giving up their time and their energy to pour into you. So you have to kind of demonstrate you're worth it. So I'm a huge proponent of that. And that's how I also do in our business as well. In Sage, we continue to add value before we just doesn't make sense, because it has to be both ways. Yeah.
Totally. And then Jin, what about you?
I think that's how Maggie found me. Because her and Lana, they were together initially because they worked together and they teamed up when they started the multifamily journey. And so Lana, she's the one that, does excellent Excels and knows all these cool formulas and makes all these cool tables and all that stuff. And she loves the underwriting aspect of it. And Maggie, she came in wanting to be the acquisitions, right? Be the person sourcing the deal, making these broker relationships and finding the deals for us. And then I'm like the third wheels, doing my own thing, capital raising and investor relations, helping my investors out. And it just so happens that's who they were missing in their team. And I said that I was syndicating before I met them. So I already kind of had a track record going of raising capital and marketing to my investors and all that stuff. And the universe just put us in the same group at some point. And that was my value that I brought to the team. And that's how we became Sage.
I love it. I think that's one of the strongest and maybe like under marketed values of mastermind groups, is that you can actually sit, whether it be physically or virtually, with a group of people. And as you get to know them over the course of weeks or months, you can figure out, well, I like doing this and I hate doing this, but Maggie loves to do this. And when you have those just constant interactions of thinking about how deals actually work and then getting to know someone, now you start to fill in the puzzle pieces and look at it now. Okay, so awesome context, great tips so far. So you've helped a few different GP groups. When did you know that it was time for you all to run your first deal or be the asset manager?
We always wanted to do that from the get-go. So even when we were helping out other teams, we've been looking at our own deals. It took us underwritten 150 deals before we get our first deal. So that is always the goal, is to run our show, but we're kind of like to just for the sake of joke, or a little control freak, okay? But we did, ultimately, that's what we want to do. Like, we wanted to source our own deals, but we know that there is a process to get there. And even though there's a goal, like for me, I appreciate the process, and that gets me going every day. If I can grow myself a little more closer and get better, and that's really my wins every day. Like, okay, let me underwrite another deal. What can I learn from this deal? What can I learn from the next deal? It did take on 150, but we got to our first deal in 2021, and it's doing really well. So
Awesome.
Continue digging.
Jin, you want to add something? I could see.
Yeah. Me. Okay. Yeah. So I think the capital raising aspect of it in the beginning was really good experience for us, right? To really see other people's processes and how they are running their deal, how they're pulling the team together, what's effective, what's working for them, what's not working for them. We got to sit down on asset management calls on the deals that we were helping co-sponsor on previously. And so we were like immersing ourselves in the world of how to operate a multifamily property, because we want to make sure that we know what we're doing, and then that we're bringing the best practices to the table when we do have our own deal under our management. So that was invaluable, having this prior experience. And that's what I mentioned earlier, taking it slow. Don't just come into a mastermind group or like a multifamily environment, be like, all right, I'm ready to buy my first deal and run it, because you will probably not know what the heck to do.
I like it. That's learning by fire in all the different aspects. How about just for fun, just so people can understand the time that it takes and the effort that it takes to actually go from conception to being the lead main GP on a deal. So Maggie, you mentioned that you analyzed 150 deals, at least when you were ready to be the lead GP. How many, and just like quick ballpark numbers, how many investor calls do you think that you made up until that point too? Like how many one-on-one meetings?
I didn't have as many as Jen. That's my big question.
For your group, how many would you ballpark that you would say, Jen?
Before we got to our first deal, where
just from like, how many people have you talked to about we're doing this project, or potentially hundreds, thousands?
Yeah, probably hundreds from the time I started until like now. And our investor list is growing all the time through like referrals, through podcasts. People are always reaching out to us. So we do these phone calls quite frequently. So probably hundreds, probably not thousands yet, but we'll get there.
I like it. And then how were you vetting the GPs that you partnered with? Because I mean, how many different groups was it? I'm sure that.
Oh yeah. So in terms of vetting on behalf of our investors, you kind of bring our audit skills into the game. And so for us, we find the process over time, of course, right? As we learn how things work and what we're looking for and what's important to look at, we find our process. And so now we have like a 3-pronged process to vetting our sponsors and also vetting the deal and the market, the whole shebang. And it's pretty detailed. I don't know if we have time to get into it, but
I mean, like, what's your one tip? Like, what's the first thing you look for? You're meeting a new GP group. Immediately, you're looking, like you, Jen, are looking for this. And I'm sure Maggie's is different.
yeah. So I know a lot of people talk about like their track record. So that is important. But I think what's missing when people say that is like looking into the validity of the track record. Because as we talked about earlier, so many people in this industry can like leverage off of the mentors or leverage off of their other partnerships, track record, right? And so it's really important for you to dig really deep and really find out what kind of asset management they might have done on these properties, right? How did they execute the refinance, or how did they execute the sale? So it's really important to dig beneath the surface.
I like it. So you're not looking at that headline of $200 million foreclosure, but you actually want to get to the root of it versus the headline.
Correct.
I appreciate it. Maggie, what about you?
Yeah, I will add on to Jen. It's like who you partner with is very important, and what roles have they took on previously. And I think it's if you've been in the conferences, and if you have been into like a lot of like a good deal of network, you start seeing people, so you can start share like contacts, and that's where we also vet out too, to make sure that have you work with these people. We do a lot of references calls before we even jump to work with our journal partners. So
I like it. Solid tips. Okay, so on the next one, this is kind of fun. So I have here as a question that I wrote is interest rates are changing faster than my toddler's mood. What are your guys' thoughts on the market today?
Yeah, I can take that. So I think I always look at the optimistic view. I do feel like we have some we grow, but I feel like we are intentionally growing us slowly and gradually our company. So and that's intentional. So we want to make sure that we grow in the right size. And I think a lot of in this right environment, I think you can start seeing when a tides goes on, you can see who's swimming naked, right? So I feel like that's going to be happening, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of more opportunities in this changing tides, and I'm excited for that. And I am sure that we're ready to. We want to be in position right now to make sure that we can capture those deals. So
I like it. Jen, what about you?
Yeah, so the market today is definitely a lot more challenging. We aren't seeing a lot of deal flows happening. Sellers are still not quite adjusted to the price expectations that the market kind of has lowered their asset to. But so yeah, as Maggie said, we're waiting for these opportunities. We're working really hard on ourselves and on our system and processes so that when these opportunities do come around later on this year, that we're ready to take advantage of them and share them with our investors.
Okay, so you're waiting for the perfect time. Granted, there's no perfect time. But what markets are you looking in?
yeah, so our markets in right now is in Alabama, Georgia, and a little bit on Tennessee side. So Chattanooga and or to Memphis area. So that's our pocket where we have a good hold.
Okay, so if anyone invests in those markets, then you have either deal flow and or a potential, I don't know, lenders or contacts. Reach out to them.
Yeah. And also I want to add that like for us, our two properties that we source and our asset managing are in Alabama market and tertiary markets, nonetheless. And I know that doesn't sound very sexy because none of our investors heard of, well, a few have heard of the market that we invested into, but it's not sexy markets at all. But at the same time, we have reasons. We obviously do our research and have found market fundamentals that support why we should be investing in these. And happy to say that all that research and all that effort that we put into it has come to fruition as we're seeing great success on these properties that we have, even in tertiary markets. Like we're buying it at a really good cost basis, which gives us a lot more room, right, to grow. And so despite being in tertiary markets, like the properties are doing very well.
I mean, I'm sure with your background and all three of your backgrounds, being able to confidently communicate numbers definitely mitigates some of the unknowns of a market. I know as I talk to our investor base and thinking about tertiary markets, it's harder for us. I mean, it's harder for me because I probably can't dive into numbers as deep as you all can. And so I'm sure that's an advantage for you all when you guys are bringing up these markets to your investor base. Let's pivot to maybe what I'm comfortable with. And let's talk about how social media, or if you even utilize social media for your business. Any quick thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, social media seems really important. And so we haven't been as active on social media as before because I guess our times has kind of got stretched thin over now that we're managing these properties. A lot of our time are being taken up to manage these properties. So we haven't been as active on social media, but it is something that we're looking to expand upon once we find the manpower to help us manage that.
Okay. Maggie, any other thoughts on that one?
I don't do as much social media. I do post occasionally. I do between LinkedIn and my personal Facebook things that I try to balance it out a little bit more of who I am as a person and a little bit of work when I want to just add it into the mix.
So where are you finding your LPs now?
A lot of referrals actually. It's a word of mouth because I think I don't know. I think maybe we're just very humble and very hard to like.
We're not salespeople. We're not like out there promoting our asset under management or units and stuff like that. Like we're just not natural salespeople. We don't know how to pump ourselves up
We're boring people. We're boring people.
We just like safety, stability, slow and steady. We like certainty. We like to make sure that we like look at all the risk factors. We like to kind of just hunker down and just get our work done and make sure that we're doing the best deal possible and performing for our investors. And honestly, I think that marketing and social media is a bit of a weakness for us because we're not really open people.
But here's what's awesome is sometimes the marketing is smoke and mirrors versus your numbers can't lie. And so if you keep raising capital and most of your investor pool is coming from referrals, and that means your numbers are clearly speaking for themselves. You guys are successful and you didn't need to have this crazy marketing campaign because you were just delivering, period.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we hope to just have our track record speak for us.
So what was the most memorable drink you've ever had? Who was it with? And what made it so memorable?
Jin?
We go first? Okay. So my most memorable drink I had was actually with Robert Kiyosaki. I actually got to sit down with him one-on-one. I invited him to sit at my table and talk to me. This was like back in late 2017. I went to my first investment conference in New Orleans, and I went because he was going to be there. So I had a clear intention of why I was going to be at this event. I was a huge fan of his after reading like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I thought it'd be so amazing to meet him in person. So I got a chance to meet him several times throughout the conference, and then on the last night, it was like their celebration dinner, and he was just standing around, and so I like went up to him and invited him to sit down with me so we can chat. And he had a few beers, and I had water. I think I don't remember what I had. But yeah, that was really memorable because I got to really speak intimately to him. And I don't know why I felt so comfortable being open with Robert Kiyosaki, maybe because I read his book. I feel like I know him. And so it was a really great conversation because the advice he gave me during that conversation was priceless. I felt like it really changed my life because he kind of gave me a different perspective on self-development and what I needed to do. Because I was like, as mentioned earlier in the beginning, I was like feeling kind of stuck, feeling really restless at this point in my life where I didn't really know how to get out of this cycle and do something more, right, with my life. And so I think I shared that with him during that conversation. And he told me about self-development. And then when I came back from the conference, I like looked at things differently and really applied discipline to working on myself. And I felt like it changed my life forever.
So now I have to know, what did he tell you? Like, what was that mindset shift? Like, what did he say?
Well, he was just like, he brought up this consulting. It's like a self-development consulting company. He's like, have you heard of this company before? I forget the name of it. Something Learner, I forget. And so he asked me, have I heard of them? I was like, no, I haven't. He was like, you should look into it. And it was something that he used, I guess, earlier on in his days. He said, you should really look into it. And I think so. I don't know. That kind of put a different spin on it when he mentioned like self-development, because I was like telling him about what was kind of bothering me and I don't know what I was kind of unhappy with in my life. And he brought this up. And so it's not like he said anything like so magical, but it's kind of like, oh, self-development. I've done that before in the past. I love reading self-help books since I was in high school. I love reading it, but then like, I guess I just never took it seriously or really like applied what I was learning from these books. So after he brought up that word, it just triggered something in my mind. Like, you know what, it has to be effective. You know what I mean? Like all those years of reading those books and nothing really changing, like maybe I was doing it wrong. So it kind of gave me a different perspective on how to approach this whole self-development thing. And so I kind of changed the approach. I read certain books that helped me kind of change my habits. Morning Miracle was the one that I'm talking about. And it really changed my habits and my routine in a way that I was able to find time to focus on myself and like quiet down my mind and really like listen to what is it that I wanted to discover about myself.
You had a once in a lifetime experience that I'm sure people would pay tens of not hundreds of $1,000s for. So Maggie, I'm assuming then is your most memorable drink, is it like Oprah?
Oh no, I don't know if I can top that. Mine's a little bit, I would say, it's not really a member, it was an event that we went to. It was a Tony Robbins event. I would say that was most memorable. I've been drinking water all day, 10 hours a day for 5 days a week. 5 consecutive days. It was a little crazy. And it's underlined with self-development. In the corporate world, I heard of Tony Robbins. I believe in his message, but I never really immersed myself into it because I don't know what was the end goal, is to create more profits for the corporation. So it didn't make any sense. So it didn't click quite at that time, even though I like you understand it, but it didn't really click. It wasn't until like I guess last year when we all of us in Sage, the three of us decided to go to Tony Robbins event. And I think when you start a company, you go through different phases. And we felt like we got into a place and we feel like sometimes you will feel plateaued. That's just the normal course of the business. And when you feel plateaued, you got to figure out how do you get out of it? How do you get unstuck? So we just thought like maybe let's try this, go to Tony Robbins and see what it is. And for me, it was really helpful. It wasn't really related to the business side. Because the business side is almost like how. The what and why was the harder question, and you had to dig very deeply. And I feel like that, and through that journey, or maybe from personally, I felt like I was like I need some deep cleaning in my head. So, and I think just being in that environment, or that 5 days or 14 hours a day, kind of washed my brain and really helped me really realize, okay, what is really truly important in my life. We prioritize what should be, and how to find more fulfillment. Because at the end of your life, you really want to, when you meet your creator, you want to tell him that you did everything you can possibly done in this lifetime, and thank you for so much for giving me all this gift. So
Now you went deep there.
I can go deep.
Well, I appreciate you all, because Jin, it seems like your group only goes out to conferences and meetings with some superstar players. So Jin's having drinks with Arbitrage Sake. Maggie, you guys are with the Tony Robbins, and now you're on my podcast. I feel so special. Well, just to round things off, what are you all looking for now? How can someone add value to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, as we grow our portfolio, we're always looking for really good, smart, trustworthy, reliable partners to partner with, whether it's on the co-sponsorship side or as a KP when we take down the larger deals that we may need extra loan guarantors on. And so, yeah, just good, reliable people similar to us.
I like it. And how can people find you?
Yeah, you can find us on our website, sageinvestinggroup.com. And although we're not super active on social media, we do have social media accounts. So sageinvestinggroup.com, Sage Investing Group on Facebook and on Instagram and LinkedIn.
I will link all of those down below. More of the YouTube subscribe stuff. If you are enjoying this, make sure to like this and share this if you found this helpful. And then if you wanted to hit subscribe, I wouldn't mind either, because that helps me a lot too. But Jin, Maggie, I really appreciate you both sharing your story. And thanks so much for jumping on the show.
Thank you so much, Josh. It was so much fun for us. So
good. We'll see all of you viewers, listeners on the next one. Cheers, guys.